So we've reached a milestone. 20 years since the September 11th attacks. It's crazy because I'm 21. I was only like a year old when they happened, so I have no memory whatsoever. Many people my age and younger, we have no memory of a pre 9/11 world. We don't even know what it was like, to travel through the airport without going through the TSA. As I was growing up, I always thought, some of that stuff existed, like a TSA. It wasn't until like high school that I realized the TSA was created after 9/11. I thought they were just always there. The way we thought or think about people changed. A lot of stuff changed after 9/11. This is something that I personally studied, this event that I studied over the years especially when I was younger. I really got into 9/11 after the death of Osama bin Laden, ironically. He died on my birthday. My birthday is May 2nd. He died May 2nd, 2011. And I remember that day, and I was wondering, like, what happened? I didn't really understand 9/11. I didn't really know. I just vaguely had heard about it through the years. I was 11. And I went into a deep dive. It was crazy. I started, researching everything about 9/11. I wasn't obsessed with it, as some of my friends thought I were, but I really I wanted to know more, and I learned I could tell you everything there was to know about 9/11. I ended up becoming a whole conspiracy theorist out here because I went down rabbit holes at that time. I was 11, 12, 13. I was just clicking on anything and everything, and I ended up watching all sorts of different theories. I ended up watching Alex Jones videos because the YouTube algorithm was different back then. And just what I was searching up, I ended up down rabbit holes, which I have since come out of, by the way. But what has changed since 9/11? We invaded two countries, Afghanistan and Iraq. Which we just left Afghanistan after 20 years. So we've been there since October, I believe. So it was like a month or two after 9/11 happened is when we invaded Afghanistan. We invaded Iraq in 2003. Iraq is weird because we have military operations, but we're not occupying Iraq. We're fighting ISIS, I think. I really don't know what we're doing in Iraq right now. It's pretty much the same thing we're doing in Syria. It's just a proxy war, pretty much. Those two wars that the Bush administration started destabilized a whole region of the world. The Middle East was already somewhat hostile. I mean, it was somewhat stable to a degree, but after those two invasions, ever since, it feels like we have more terrorism now than we did at that time. In the early 2000s, pre 9/11, in the late 90s. There was a lot of terrorist activity, don't get me wrong, because before the 2000s, you get into the 80s and 70s, there was a whole bunch of more terrorist activity, but it wasn't the terrorist activity that we think of today. But it seems like now, especially in 2015, 16, I remember when ISIS arose, 2014, 15, 16. ISIS became the new thing, and it was those terrorist attacks were more... Anybody could do it. Anybody could be inspired. Some random guy at his house could be inspired by an ISIS video or try to travel to Syria to go join ISIS and then commit a terrorist attack out of nowhere, running people down with a bus or something. That was more terrifying. And it feels like that type of terrorist activity was a result of our occupations in these countries, because a lot of people blame Obama after pulling out of Iraq. Obama ended the Iraq war in 2011, right? And as a result, they said, he left a vacuum for terrorists. So when we invaded this country and toppled the government, we decided to try a nation build. So we try to reform a new government. But what they don't realize, or I'm sure they realized and knew this, but there's different factions. There's Sunnis and Shias. And in Iraq, they did not get along. I don't remember if it was the Shia or Sunni government that Saddam's government was. I think he might have been Shia, or I can't remember. Do not quote me on that. but he was one of those. And when he lost power, they started fighting each other. Okay, you had sectarian violence. They're different sects. They started fighting each other, and in many cases, some of these became radicalized because the country was basically destroyed. Their power structure was destroyed. Even when we tried to create a new power structure, that vacuum of leadership was filled by just absolute randoms who wanted to commit some terroristic acts. They got power. They wanted to fight the other side, and it just turned into a complete mess. Then you had ISIS. Now, ISIS is one of the strangest groups to me because it was like, it always felt like ISIS had this like funder, somebody who was funding them and giving them all these weapons and all these vehicles and all this stuff. They had Hollywood level production when they were making beheading videos and stuff. ISIS was it was a strange thing. It was different from Al Qaeda. Al Qaeda, I don't even remember. It was like you would hear about Al Qaeda, but you didn't know what Al Qaeda looked like. You didn't know what their flag looked like. You didn't know any of that. ISIS, there was ISIS. You would see them all the time on the news. They had the black flag with the white writing in the middle. You knew what they looked like. It was very, very obvious. But that was something that felt like we were less safe than we were before. Because like now, not only do we have more surveillance, we have a lot more surveillance, but it feels like we have more crime. Now, overall crime has gone down, but in the recent years, especially after the pandemic, crime has seen an increase. So we're being surveilled more, we're being watched more, but it doesn't feel like we're more safe as a result of that. So we had the Patriot Act, all of that, but I still feel, like it's just crazy out there. Like people are just absolutely crazy. Terrorists, the evolution of terrorism is also something that's happened over the last 20 years. So you don't just have going and blowing somebody up. You have cyber terrorism now. People hack or like to do these ransomware hacks, which I guess you couldn't really call that terrorism. But if somebody shut down a whole power grid and caused like mass destruction, that could be considered terrorist activity. Also, a big mistake that the Bush administration did after 9/11 was not giving the detainees of Guantanamo Bay the protections that they should be given to prisoners of war after under the Geneva Convention. They considered them detainees, and they tortured many of them. And some of those people they tortured, I think some of them have been released since, and others. Al Qaeda and other groups use that as propaganda. They said, look at the U.S. They just torture us. They snatch us up out of our sleeps and torture us in a prison somewhere in the middle of nowhere, right? And they use that as propaganda to motivate and radicalize people. And torture is illegal. That's a war crime. And so there was a lot of just bad things that happened after 9/11 in response to the attack itself. The Bush administration needing a massive response to capitalize off the patriotic energy that was after 9/11. You had American flags everywhere at football games, at everybody's houses, just had the American flag. It was America, America, America. Something that I didn't know at the time, apparently they started calling French fries freedom fries, or tried to call them freedom fries. It was something, I didn't know that, but they capitalized off of that. They had the American people behind them. The American people just wanted them to do something, and they did. They invaded two countries, and as a result, it didn't really change anything. Like Saddam had nothing to do with 9/11. The Taliban, fighting the Taliban, they were apparently harboring Osama bin Laden, and Osama bin Laden, we killed him, but he ended up being in Pakistan. So we were still in Afghanistan fighting the Taliban and Al Qaeda, I guess. And it was just, I don't know. It was just an over response, and they took advantage of that moment to invade countries, and that was the worst. That's probably the worst part, because it seems like that made everything worse. But yeah, it's crazy that day. Rest in peace to all those people. because the magnitude of that event is still hard to comprehend. Like, I look back at it and it seems crazy. You just watch these two humongous buildings gone within seconds. Seeing a plane fly into a building on live TV, that is something that's so hard to comprehend, which is why I think so many people will make theories about it, because it just seems just incomprehensible. It doesn't make any sense. Like, how could something like this happen? Now, there are still a lot of questions that are unanswered. I have a whole bunch of questions about 9/11. I'm not going to spew them out here, but I have a whole bunch of questions about 9/11, like many others. I know recently Biden, he's sent out an executive order to declassify some documents from the 9/11 Commission, I believe. But I don't know if they're really going to do that, because you got to go through the FBI. The people who were trying to keep it classified are charged with declassifying it. So who knows how that's going to go. But anyway, rest in peace to the 2,997 or 98 people that died on 9/11, including the Flight 93 heroes. Yeah. So it's been 20 years. It's insane. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comment section below. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, like, comment, subscribe, like, whenever you do it, however you do it, wherever you do it, just do it. It's your boy Red X Black, and I'm out. Peace.